Chaos. Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. This is a really, I cannot recommend this enough. If you are into researching some of the weird things that happened in the 60s, assassinations, and all the crazy stuff that went down, especially if you have Ed Sanders, The Family, I would definitely recommend this. I'm going to say up front that my only complaint about this, well, actually, quick housekeeping is in order. So Chaos, this is by Tom O'Neill with Dan Piepenbring. I'm going to probably butchered that name, but let me get the publication date for you here. I got this about a year ago, I believe. No, might have been two years ago. Yeah, this is from 2019. Initially, it was kind of funny. I actually heard the author, Tom O'Neill, I heard him being interviewed on Joe Rogan's podcast, and that's what really sucked me into this, because like, good night, this dude dug deep. So what this is a much closer examination of the Manson murders and all the people involved in that, and all the weird tangled web of that around that community back in the late 60s. And how this started is an interesting story in and of itself. I believe it was the 30th anniversary in 1999. He was going to write a story for a magazine and for the anniversary of the Manson murders, and he wound up uncovering so much stuff on it that it was way beyond the scope of a magazine article, and so he asked for an extension, and it just goes on and on and on. Anyway, he wound up finally turning this into a book, and in this book is the story of the book, which that's interesting too, because a lot of this material was so incendiary, like the original prosecuting attorney, just his dealings with that guy, Bugliosi, I think it was. That is crazy. But the big take-home message for this is, when I first heard about Manson back when I was in high school and first really kind of understood the case, and I think this goes for most people. Most people's idea of this was that Manson was this kind of just crazy but charismatic charlatan that got these hippie kids to go along with his crazy ideas and got them to murder people under this whole helter-skelter thing. Isn't that crazy? And but they were all just nutcases and all that. Well, first of all, one of the things that he uncovers in this, and as well as Ed Sanders in his book, The Family, is how well connected Charles Manson was in the music scene and just in Hollywood scene in general. There's some of his connections will really surprise you. If you have not dug into that before, you'll be surprised at how well connected he was and who all he was rubbing elbows with. It was not just a bunch of random hippie folks. And some of the properties that he kind of took over and hung out on, again, were not just little slums. There was a whole movie ranch, the Spawn movie ranch, that he and his bunch pretty much took over. My one complaint with this, and it's really not Tom O'Neill's fault, this is more history's fault. My one complaint is he gets a wide net of a lot of stuff. There's a whole lot of information in here. There's really not a firm conclusion. So when you're reading this, go into it knowing that, and you will enjoy the book a lot more. Know that there's no massive payoff at the end where he's going to pull this all together. A lot of it is the mystery of, hey, we still don't know all of these things. And so that's a little frustrating, because sometimes it feels like it's building to some kind of climax like that, and that does not happen. And again, that's not O'Neill's fault. That is the fault of, like, there's so much stuff that he runs into, like the tapes of some of the interviews with some of the key witnesses and some of the murderers that conveniently went missing, and all the suspicious deaths connected to it. Lots of interesting stuff. He figures out that one of the guys that may possibly have been at the crime scene right after was a CIA operative, or if I'm remembering this right. Lots of good information. Most importantly, just shows how this was a much bigger case than people have been led to believe. And there are much bigger implications with possibly these being political, I say political, these being hits on certain people that might have been of a political or even or financial nature. So you have to look at this in a much better, bigger picture than just crazy hippies killing rich people. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, and that's where this really ties into books like Mari Terry's Ultimate Evil, of getting into that idea of there being hit squads of people like this that just look like nutcases, but they're actually serving the purpose of taking out political rivals or financial rivals or what have you. So anyway, Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. Great, great book. Also for the mind control aficionados out there, he pins down a solid connection to Louis Jolyon West. Dr. West was, of course, one of the key guys with LSD back in the 60s. And he uncovers a bizarre connections with Dr. West connected to being the guy that saw, my brain just cramped. Lee Harvey Oswald's killer, the guy who shot Lee Harvey Oswald in the police station in Dallas here. He saw him in prison, and shortly after, his mind wasn't right. So there's a lot of fascinating connections to a lot of stuff that you would not necessarily expect to be found in the same box as Charles Manson and all of that. So I don't want to give away too much of that because there's so much information in this, and it is a really good read. But just, it's a better read if you go into this knowing that there's not going to be a big payoff. You're basically going to get a much bigger, much more accurate picture of what was happening there. But some of this history is still unfolding. So hopefully someday there will be a follow-up to this that will really bring this all to a close. But as it is, this is a great snapshot of kind of where things stand and who all was connected. And again, the tentacles go all over the place. So there you go, Chaos by Tom O'Neill.